All right, let's dive in. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the blueprint for building a manufacturing powerhouse. We're talking about the core formula, the secret sauce that really separates the world's most dominant industrial regions from, well, everyone else. You know, have you ever stopped to wonder why certain labels like Made in China or Made in Germany just feel inevitable? Why is it that some places become the world's factory floor, while other places, even with similar resources, just never quite get there? Is it all just a roll of the dice, or is there a formula? Well, here's the key insight, and it's pretty simple. It is not an accident. Industrial dominance is not random. It's engineered. It's built piece by piece on a very specific, repeatable set of conditions that all have to work together. Think about it like a skyscraper. A truly strong manufacturing base isn't just one giant factory. No, it's this incredibly complex structure, a carefully designed architecture where every single part supports and reinforces all the others. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today, the 8 interconnected pillars that create this self-sustaining industrial ecosystem. When you get these things aligned just right, manufacturing becomes this absolute force of nature. So let's break them down. Okay, so first things first, we have to lay the groundwork. The first 2 pillars are the physical foundation that everything else is built on. You just can't scale up production without getting these right from the very beginning. And that starts with pillar number 1, infrastructure. At its heart, manufacturing is all about movement, getting raw materials in, shifting components around, and shipping finished goods out. Making that movement as frictionless as possible is totally non-negotiable. You've got to think about infrastructure on 3 different levels. So first, you need those massive external links to the rest of the world. We're talking huge ports and airports. Second, you need the internal arteries, the highways and railways to connect everything inside your borders. And third, you need the basic industrial utilities, reliable power, clean water, and today, critically, high-speed data connectivity. All right, let's move on to our second foundational pillar, energy. Now, this is so often overlooked, but it is the absolute lifeblood that powers the entire system. Without it, the most advanced factory in the world is just a big, quiet building. And here's the counterintuitive part. For modern manufacturing, having a stable, totally uninterrupted power supply is way more valuable than having slightly cheaper electricity. Think about it. A single outage can cost a factory millions of dollars, completely wiping out any savings you got from a lower price. When it comes to energy, consistency is king. Okay, so we've got our foundation in place. Now let's talk about the dynamic systems that actually make things happen. These next couple of pillars are all about the flow of materials and people. They're like the circulatory and nervous systems of our industrial body. And that brings us to pillar 3, supply chains. I love this metaphor, thinking of them as the central nervous system. It's just perfect, because that's what they do. They coordinate every single action, they transmit information, and they allow the entire ecosystem to react to changes almost instantly. So, what does a really strong supply chain look like? Well, it boils down to 3 things. First, proximity, having your suppliers literally right next door. Then, depth, and that just means you have multiple suppliers for the same part, which creates competition and makes you more resilient. And finally, fluidity, the ability to adapt and change on the fly, which comes from trusted relationships, not just from rigid, ironclad contracts. This leads us right into pillar 4, labor, and we really have to get this right. The common wisdom, the thing you always hear, is that manufacturing just chases the lowest wages around the globe. But the reality, it is so much more sophisticated than that. Yeah, this shift in thinking is absolutely crucial. The old idea was just cheap wages. That's it. But the modern reality is a dynamic system. You need scale, a massive pool of available workers. You need skill diversity, everyone from machine operators to engineers with PhDs. And you need flexibility, so that skilled workers can easily move between different companies, spreading knowledge and expertise as they go. All right, so we've got the foundation, we've got the flow. Now it's time to add the horsepower for growth and the brains for innovation. These next pillars are what allow a manufacturing base to not just survive, but to truly dominate and evolve over time. Pillar 5 is capital. See, manufacturing is a long game. It requires these huge upfront investments in things, factories, machines that might not pay off for years and years. So you need a very specific kind of money. You need patient capital that's willing to wait. For capital to really move the needle, it needs to have a few key qualities. 1, it needs that long-term outlook. 2, it has to be directed or at least encouraged towards strategic sectors. And three, and this is so important, it has to be available as working capital for all those smaller suppliers who are really the backbone of the whole system. Up next, pillar number 6, technology. Now, we often think of technology as, a single eureka moment, a breakthrough invention. But in manufacturing, the real lasting advantage comes from cumulative learning. It's about getting just a little bit better, a little bit smarter with every single production cycle. A lasting technological edge is built by institutionalizing knowledge so that improvements aren't lost when key people leave. It's built by focusing on process innovation, things like reducing defects by just 0.1%, which sounds small, but adds up to massive gains. And today, of course, it's all amplified by data, which lets you constantly optimize every little thing. All right, we are almost there. We've got the structure, the flow, and the fuel. These last two pillars are all about the rules of the road. They're like the operating system that ensures the whole structure can withstand shocks and actually last for decades. Pillar 7 is institutions. And really, this all comes down to one word: predictability. Can you enforce a contract? Can you get a building permit in a reasonable amount of time? Businesses absolutely need to operate with confidence, knowing that the basic rules of the game aren't going to change overnight. That stability is the bedrock of any long-term investment. And that brings us right to our final pillar, number 8, adaptability. Because let's face it, the one constant is change. Technologies evolve, costs rise, markets shift. The industrial regions that try to cling to yesterday's advantages are the ones that ultimately decline. Real, durable strength lies in the ability to reinvent yourself. So here's the big takeaway, the most crucial point of all of this. None of these pillars work in isolation. You can't just have cheap labor or a great port and call it a day. The real magic happens when all 8 pillars are aligned and actively reinforcing each other. That alignment creates a kind of force multiplier, a gravitational pull for manufacturing that becomes almost impossible for anyone else to compete with. It is the system that truly matters. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As we look at the future, with all the global shifts in energy, technology, and geopolitics, which one of these 8 pillars do you think is the most fragile right now? Is it our energy systems, our supply chains, or is it something else entirely? That, right there, is the big question for the 21st century.